All right, so it says I'm live. Let's hope the audio and obviously I think the video is generally going to be fine. It's the audio which I'm a bit worried about. Uh, yes, do let me know what is my default thing over here. Bluetooth. Switch that off. Right, I think my microphone would have been a different one. So yes, guys, if you're able to hear me clearly, then let me know because somehow I am not able to understand that I haven't enabled the microphone or rather the speaker. Otherwise, it has a echo problem. Wait for a few more minutes before we start. So, what are we trying to do today? Basically, today, what I will be trying to do is first of all create one API where I'm able to get the failure list for one particular URL. So the idea is when I am looking at one particular link, I should be able to click on that and go into the detail page. And in the detail page, I should be able to see the recent failures that the particular URL had. And once I do that, we will move to the next functionality, which is we will try to have a seeder because during the development, I will kind of delete my database and do certain stuff, experiment a bit. So the seeder will need to be populated properly. And then we are already capturing the failures. But what I feel is I would also need to capture the success entries because once I have the success entries, I'm planning to add a new column in the URL table and keep the average time so that whenever there is a new entry in the check table and that at that time, right, taken to ping that URL is, let's say, 30% more than the average time, we should be able to send a notification saying, there is some problem with your site. It is running a bit slow, so maybe you need to check that out. So yeah, that is what we will be doing today. So yeah, I think we can get started. So first of all, I'll show you the database. So these are the URLs which I was tracking. What I have done so far is there is this test URL. I'll show you the web.php route. What we are doing over here is we get all the URLs, which means basically right now I have these two. Then we iterate through each of them and we raise an event saying check URL. The check URL has a listener, which is this listener. It calls the service, and we are checking for the status of that URL by doing an HTTP get. We get the total time taken as well because that is important for us to track. And then once we have that, we check whether we got an okay response or not. If we don't, then we notify, we create a failure entry, we save the status of that URL, and then we return. And if we have a success, we do nothing, we just return the response. Okay, right? So this is what we are doing as of now, and obviously we will be improving on these things. Okay. So my monitor, I can see that it is saying my stream's current bit rate is lower than the recommended bit rate. So guys, if you feel there is any problem at any point of time, feel free to comment on the chat and I'll try to see what best can be done. But obviously, there's a lot of rain around here, so the weather is a bit playing with me. There was a power cut some time back, so I was not even sure whether I will be able to do the stream or not. Anyway, so let's get started. How do we go about it? So I need to create a URL which will be listing the failures, right? So first of all, let's try and get our relations in place. So I have URL, and in that URL, what I will do is have a relation called failures, like this. So URL has many failures. Okay. So if this is done properly, I can go to Tinker, do URL with failures, find one. I'm able to load the relation. There are three entries obviously over here with URL one, so this thing is working. What we can even do is maybe get the reverse relationship, which is a URL failure. It actually will belong to a URL. So URL class, right? So maybe what I can even do is I'll have to load Tinker again. By the way, which Tinker is basically a shortcut to PHP Artisan Tinker. I just do this. So if I do URL failure with URL find one, although it's very unlikely I will do that ever, but yes, this is how it will come up. So my relations are generally working fine. That's one thing which I have taken care of. Now, obviously, because we need to have a URL, why don't we create one inside our API? But for that API to handle, we will also need a controller. So first, we will create PHP artisan make controller. So URL failure controller. Okay, and then if I go to oops api.php, let me close everything out. I'll add a new route. By the way, everything right now is without authentication. I'm really not too much concerned about that at this point because at any point I can add that middleware. So yeah, just I'm letting you know that it will be done, but don't worry about it right now. Okay, class, and maybe I'll have index. Okay, so need to create that method, right? And what are we going to do in our index method? So let's just say because we are doing a route model binding, we will definitely get the URL. So let's just quickly check that. Step one, right? So come over here. I have URL failure slash one. Oops. Oh, sorry. API. API URL. So this is fine. I mean, this is one, this is two. I know two doesn't have any failure, so this is what we are going to play with. Now, we are already loading the model, but we want one more relation. So why don't we do something like dollar response equals dollar URL load failures, okay, and do first, okay, return, oops, not retry, return response based on data response 200, and let's just see. Fine, this is what I wanted to do. Okay, no comments as of now. Okay. Hi Bernard, thanks for joining. I hope you find this useful. Okay, so let's get back to what we were doing. So we have this. Now, where is my API? Hmm, it's not loading. And why is that? Let's see. This is failures. Hmm, this is a bit strange. We can get that relation, which is not happening. Hmm, I can do one more query and for now solve the problem, but it is going to make one more additional, one additional query. So I'm just thinking, why will the get help? I don't think so. That's not a. Let me. Okay. You know what? For now, I mean, I know it is not the best possible thing to do, but URL with, okay, failures. I think there's load used to work. I'm getting it wrong. So where ID is URL ID. Basically, what is happening is, I'm not able to use the route model binding properly in this particular case because um, the query would have been already made. So I don't know why this is happening. I'll have to look at that. I'll update the code accordingly. Okay. Bernard says, "What is the purpose of this project? Is this the beginning of the lesson?" No, Bernard, this is not the beginning of the lesson. If you go to my channel, you will see there are, I think this is the fifth um, video, live video that I'm doing. It's part of an application which I am building. The front end is a public code base done in Next.js and React. Okay, obviously. Um, so the front end code base is public. It's a application where I'll be able to track the URLs status code. So basically, if a URL goes down, any of my client website goes down, this application will help me send notifications. And also, if my site is generally a bit slow, this application will help in that sense as well. So it's a small little project that I'm building for my own consumption, but the plan is that I'll kind of host it, and if others are interested, they can even use that same thing. Okay, so yeah, let's continue. At least for now, we have one additional query which I need to figure out why this is happening, but the data is visible. This API is going to give me this. Okay, this is what I wanted to do, because then what is going to happen is, on my front end, I will be able to consume this and create a list. And yeah, show the details. But then this is only the failures, and as I said, we will need to track the success as well. So where is my Visual Studio Code? If I close anything, and I'll show you my models, I have URL failure already. Okay, I'll need one more model, which is the URL success. So why don't we quickly create that? PHP artisan make model. I need the migration URL success. Once I have done that, let's understand what are the different things that we want to have or want to track when there is a success. Obviously, the URL ID is something which we will need. Rather, you know what, success seems a little odd to have checks. That's fine. I think success is good. Right. So in the success, I will have, as I said, two columns. Okay, the table foreign ID for URL class, and it will be indexed because I will be making calls based on URL, so that's fine. And then I'll store the time, obviously. So float time, and on inserts, obviously I will have a time, so it will not be empty. Fine. So this is done. I need one more field in my URLs table, which is going to be a float called average time. Default will be 0. Okay. Now, the moment I do this, see, I'm right now editing my existing migration. On a production application, this is not what you will typically do because the database is created, right? But then I'm still in my development mode. And I'm happy how things are going, and I can at some point decide to change my database as well. So what happens is, I'll show you which MRS. Basically, I have a command called PHP artisan migrate, refresh, and then see. So when I do this, I get my URLs, but I lose my failure data. And I want to mock this data because it will help me in creating those APIs. So I made this change. Now, obviously, this table is fine. The average is all 0. But when I am creating it, I need that data. So why don't we quickly add a little bit of code over here? So let's just say we take this URL, no, not this, uh, color URL equals this. Okay, make some space, and what we will do is we will run a loop for $I equals 0, $I less than 5, $I plus plus. So this is my loop. What am I trying to do? Time, $time equals, oops. Now, basically, I'm going to create a few failures in here. Okay. Um, so URL has failures. So what I will do is, let's just say add minutes 5 into $I. The first time it will be 5, then second is, you know 5 into 2, that kind of a thing. Uh, do this one. Right, so it will add 4 entries. That's fine. And then I have already added the time. So maybe URL failures create. Okay, what are the different things that we need? For the failure, we need the URL, but because I am doing this, it will be automatically updated. Just do this maybe. Okay, let's see. If I refresh, this is fine, and I have 4 entries. So I'm happy with what the seeder is doing. Okay. Bernard said, "How do you set alias? Looks cool." Well, Bernard, this is a shell alias. What I'm using is Z. shells or Z shell. Okay, and there is a ZSHRC file. Okay, and I have different shortcuts mentioned over there. Unfortunately, I can't show you the file because there are certain client shortcuts, like when I have few projects and if I type the project name, it takes me to that folder. Maybe I will share my Z shell file so that you can have a reference. But yeah, basically what you can do is create shortcuts for that, and those things will save you time. So for example, I have GES for Git status, I have GPL for Git pull and stuff like that. Okay, right. Getting back to our code. So I have the seeder. Obviously, the seeder is done. The success is here. Why don't we quickly add a relation? We have failures, we have success as well, and this is going to be URL success. Okay, with this in place, now how do we handle the success? So let's see. We know that the listener is getting called. What this listener is doing, it is taking the URL checker service, okay, URL checker service, and it is calling the check URL status function, which is here. Okay. Now, if we want to, first of all, save the time, right? We will have to make that entry somewhere here. The failure is getting captured over here, so obviously the success will be captured here. So URL success, oops, create here, but I think I haven't done the very important part, which is dollar protected. No, sorry, fill label, and inside my fill label, what are the different things? Success, right? I have URL ID and time. So these two fields are fillable, and what I can now do is URL ID, mm, okay, or maybe URL success create time is, now this is micro time, right? So I'll have to do a round on this of 2, otherwise things can go really bad. Okay, I mean microseconds will not directly, I think, go into the float table. So this is a better way. That's what I feel. So now URLs are not going to fail. So I can actually run that thing, which is on 8000, run the test. And let's see, I have one success only, failing. Right. This is going to fail. Oops. All done. Refresh. Nothing over here, and I have 3 success here. And as you can see, I'm also storing the average, the time taken, right? So with this in place, what I think we can do is, hmm, da, da, da. So I have URL success over here. For the failing, obviously I don't need to, because if the site is slow, I don't want that slow time or the higher response time to add to the average. So maybe what I will do is, hmm, I'm just thinking how I can get a list of the checks. Let me quickly go to this, create a temp URL, and try to do some code over here, which is, let's say I get $URL bit success find one, okay, and do a return. Let's start looking at things. I have only one, is it? Why? ID has two. That's fine. What I can do is maybe run this a couple of times again. So now I have three, right? And if I do two, I will get one more. This is 0.37, 0.4, 0.37, 0.3, and 0.4. Okay, so I have a few entries over here. What basically I'm trying to do is get the average. Okay, um, let's just say, what if I get over here? I don't want all the entries, or maybe I can actually, yes. So what I will do is, see, the success can be a huge list, right? I mean, every minute, let's say we are scanning, so after 15 minutes basically I will have 15 entries, but then I will also have a cron which we can use to, clean up, let's say, entries which are more than 15 minutes old, because I don't see any major advantage or anything, which I'm going to gain out of that, um, because the average is now clear, right? So what I will do is, I'm thinking, um, $average will be URL success. Okay, I am not sure I can do luck. Okay, success as average and success as time, right? So why don't we log this and see what is coming up? $average, something like this. What happens? It's an array of all the entries. Perfect, because we have one, two, three, four, one, two, three, four, right? And oh, sorry, second. I'm loading the second one. So one, two, three, four, five. Right. Second has always one more because initially it failed. So I have five entries, and I can basically do something like AVG, because this is a collection, right? The Laravel's collection allows me to run the average on it. Now I'll have just one entry, one value, which is the average of all the entries that I have, right? And what I can then do is, so basically, this line of code I can steal from here, and URL avg equals avg, and URL save, something like this. What happened? Right, my bad. The semicolon is missing. All right, so let's try this out. Let's see. The entries are over here, and the average time for both these URLs are 0 as of now. The moment I do a test, I have a failure. Unknown column AVG. Perfect. It is average time. So I'll have to do average underscore time. There is my URL. Refresh. It is white, and I have the values. Perfect. So I think with this entire code, I have been able to do what? My So first thing is, we created one small API where the URL failures were happening. This is the API that I'm talking about, right? Um, so as you can see right now, there are 4 failures. This is something which I'll be using in my front end application. You will be able to see a video of that pretty soon. The second is what we did was obviously the seeder for the failures as well. That is also one part. And then in our checking logic, right? The URL checking logic, what I have done is we were already having some logic that if the URL scan fails, if the response is not an OK response, then we were sending the notifications, we were capturing that information in the URL failure table. All that was fine. But if we have a success, then we are making an entry in the success table. Also, we are creating, we are updating the fresh average value for that particular site by taking X number of um, ping times or response time. And I think the next step, ideally, which I will do in the next video over the weekend or something like that, is we will raise an event from here, okay, or maybe in the listener. I'll have to see what is the best way to go about it. But this event, which what it will do is it will take the URL, it will take the current time, and it will check if the current the current time is x times more than the average, and if it is, it will send a notification. So we will go through the same process, that we will raise an event where there will be a listener to it. It will The listener will listen to it. There will be a notification class. We will use our Zulip notification to send that notification saying there's something wrong with your site, and you need to check it because it seems to be slow. Okay, so yeah, that's about it, guys. That's what I wanted to cover, um, this functionality in my application. And Bernard, okay, Bernard is saying something. Let me see. Please show us how you set up your alias before you close video. Okay, so I won't show my ZSHR file, but I can search that. So setting up an alias inside ZSHRC file. Where do I put aliases? So you don't need the ZSH thing. You can even do it in the bash file. Basically, what you need to do is either in your bash file or in your ZSHRC file, do something like this: alias flag this and the command. Okay, which basically means you are setting an alias for this particular thing. Is there a better example? Right. Can you see this? GC. Alias GC equals git commit with a message initial commit. This is what I'm talking about. You can have git g add, which basically will do a git add dot, right? So for example, in here, I am doing GS. If I see everything is fine, I'll do git add this GC, which stands for git commit, live coding of URL check success record. Okay, and then GP. What you basically need to do is either in your ZSHRC file or inside the git bash, sorry, not the bash RC file, you need to put something like this, and that's about it. That's the only thing you need to do, and everything will work for you. You may need to load your terminal again, but yes, that's how the whole things work. I hope that helps, that clarifies your doubt, Bernard, and try that out. If you have any problem, right, feel free to comment, and I will definitely help you, because at that point I can share a lot of URLs and code with you. And yeah, so that's about it, guys. If you have any questions, any concepts where you have any questions, feel free to comment below. If you like this video and if you have been here with me so far, do subscribe to the channel and support me. Thank you and bye.